our goal now is to try to incorporate those concepts and to create a camera that is going to take advantage of the use of a lens instead of a pinhole. And that's going to give us a couple of advantages. Right? If you imagine if the pinhole is this big and the lens is this big, it's going to let in a significant more amount of light than the pinhole, right? The pinhole works because it's really, really tiny and it's able to constrain those light rays to form a sharp image or relatively sharp image without the use of a lens. But a lens, you know, is a bigger opening, but it needs a way to focus that light, and that's what the curved surfaces do. So what we're going to need is a couple of things. We need our lens. We're going to need just some sort of a box or container, probably a little bit larger than what we used before. It might be possible to repurpose your cereal box or other things as well. I'm going to use a part of my Pringles can, and again, I could just do this with a rolled up piece of paper instead as well. There's lots of options about how we could go about doing this. And I'm just going to need a couple of supplies, some tape and maybe some white paper and, you know, something to cut with, those sort of things. And my first goal is to create something that can focus but also maintain darkness. And then we can look at some other ways that we can maybe improve it or flip the image or other sorts of attachments that maybe we can utilize to improve the camera even further or make it maybe very artful. This is going to look just like a cardboard box for right now. So let's just jump in there and see what we've got. So I'm going to move some of my supplies out of the way. This is going to be my container. It was just something that came the other day from Amazon. And here's our lens. And I'm going to repurpose part of this. So what my thought is I'm going to use this to attach my lens, right? So I'm going to put this directly on top of there. And then what I want to be able to do is use a portion of this to be able to slide that in and out of the actual box surface so that sometimes it can be closer, like 4 inches, and sometimes it might go out so that I get closer to 6.5 or 6 inches, depending on how close that object is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a portion of this and just cut it off and leave this part alone so I'll still have my pinhole camera. So I'm not going to need this portion. I still have my, my pinhole camera part that's still functioning, but I'm going to go ahead and set that off to the side. And really what I'm concerned about is this part here. So I'm going to design this in a way that I can actually take advantage of this part so that it doesn't go through the opening, so it doesn't pull out all the time. So if I take my box here, then what I'm going to do is basically I want to attach the lens to my camera here. And so I'm just going to flip it right here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a circle so I know how big it's going to be. So when I look here, it's kind of in the center, good enough. I'm actually going to draw the circle on the inside. That way I can just cut a little bit to the outside of that, rather than it being too big and loose. All right, so there's our opening that we want to cut. So this way, because I went from the inside, I'm just going to go just to the outside edge of my circle and just kind of carefully cut. Because it's a circle, I am kind of sawing as opposed to trying to make multiple passes like we talked about before, only because on something that's that round, it's going to be really hard to be able to do that. There we go. Perfect. So now that we have that, I'm just going to double check and see if I need to open it up a little bit. So I might need to make it just a little bit wider. That's okay, because I don't want to pinch it. There we go. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I want this ridged edge here to go on the inside. That way, as I go to adjust my camera, and I go to focus, what I don't want is every time I pull this up for it to slide all the way out, right? So because there already was that edge, I'm just going to take advantage of that so that it will sit there. But if I was using cereal boxes, I might be able to use 2 cereal boxes and slide them in and out of each other as a different solution, right? There's lots of ways we can go about approaching this. I'm just, again, working with what I've got. And if we look at from the top here, so now we've got this open area, and again, this is going to be able to move forward and back. So once that's in place, then I'm just going to go ahead and attach my lens. And it's going to be really pretty close. I think if I just fudge it a little bit, it probably will fit just inside of that inside ridge, which would be nice. And then I'm just going to take a piece of tape and just go around that outside edge. It always takes more than I think it's going to get all the way around the circumference. And then we can just kind of press down on there and just make sure that it's staying in place. So that way, you know, it should be able to kind of get that inside, but then also, you know, be able to slide that out. And I may want to open that up just a little bit more, make sure that all my little folds and things are you know, as tight as possible so that they're not causing it to kind of hang up on those outside edges. So if we look from this direction, now we can see, you know, we're going to be able to adjust that and slide that, you know, forward and back so that we can do our focusing. All right, so now we've got the lens attached. Then the next thing that we really need is to have a surface for this to project onto. So I'm going to go ahead and use one of our pieces of tracing paper, but again, it doesn't have to be tracing paper. This could easily just be a regular white sheet of paper. I just happened to run out of white paper a second ago, so I was using them for other demonstration purposes. So then with this white piece of paper, what we were going to do is basically we need to, you know, fix it in place here so that we have a plane across to project our image onto. And we talked about the distance, the maximum distance, or the minimum and the maximum, right? So when I extend this all the way out, I want it to be about 6.5 inches or so away from where our surface is going to be. And so what I'm going to do is take my ruler. And so when I look here, what I want is from when this lens is all the way out there, I want my paper probably to be around, you know, here-ish. Now, let's just double check. So if I have that there and I push this all the way inside, I just want to make sure that it's not going to hit that front part. And it looks like if I pull this part up, my lens is about to there. So I've got a little bit of room still, you know, to be able to focus all the way to that back part. So I might just move it back a little bit from there. Maybe I'll put my paper around where this crease is here. So that way, you know, I can, if the lens is out there, you know, 4.5 inches or so should be at about that point. Now, when I go to put this in here, it looks like this is actually really pretty close to the right width, but I don't want it to bow. So I'm going to end up either cutting or folding it slightly. And if I just slide it all the way down, I'm just going to kind of mark it with my finger about how far it needs to be cut. And then I can trim this. There we go. Okay. So now at least my height is about correct. Perfect. And then what I want is I can do one of two things. I think because we're going to be taping this down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just do a very small fold on this side here. And then maybe the same thing on this side here. And basically I want it to actually be at about a 90-degree angle. So that way as it sits out, I can tape those parts down. Otherwise, if it's just the exact size, it's really hard to tape across to that. So then what I need is a piece of tape. There we go. And I don't actually need the tape to be that big, so I'm just going to tear this in this way just to conserve a little bit. So now that I have those in place, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and kind of fold these in just a little bit and then slide it. Let's see, I'm going to fold it this way. Slide it into the position about where I want it. Make sure I get it all the way down. So we want this to be basically as parallel as possible and as taut as possible. We don't want it to bow. We don't want it to go at a strange angle, those sort of things. So now I've got that in position. And if I pull this back just a little bit, you know, we can start to see inside of here and see our image. You know, as I start to slide it out, it becomes more in focus, right? So now that we've got that in position, I really have everything I need to be able to start to view, but we do want it to be a camera obscura, so it'd probably be a good idea to go ahead and close these up to make it a little bit darker, right? But when I do that, I now have no way of viewing inside of there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and close this. And again, this doesn't have to be black tape, it could be any kind of tape, it just happens to be what I have around. So now we've got a solid box, but we have no way of being able to see our image. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna create a hole on this side so that I can then look through it and observe it. So now what I should be able to do is actually start to look through, and then as I'm looking through my camera, I can start to adjust, and now I can see that what's outside is now in focus, now it's out of focus, you know, and then if I push it in, out of focus, right? So I'm able to adjust that, you know, right from there as I start to look through and observe my camera. Let's take it outside really quick. We'll take a look and see and put the camera inside there so we can actually look through our camera Obscura. So I just ran into the backyard, and this is just some of the milkweed. It's a bright and sunny day. This will always work better if we are in direct sunlight as opposed to kind of in the shade. You know, just because it's going to have more vibrancy and more color and those sort of things. So let's take a quick look. So I've got my camera over here. I'm just going to pull it off the tripod really quick and attach it onto there so we can actually see through there. Normally you would be, again, you know, holding it up to your eye and looking and observing. Gonna bring this down a little bit. All right, so here we are inside of our camera, and you can see, you know, you can see the white paper and everything. It maybe got folded a little bit when I taped it up. And if I start to adjust, you should see it goes from blurry, and then slowly it becomes more in focus as we start to adjust that front part of the lens.